What's it like to have a vampire boyfriend? One second he's sweet-talking you, and the next he could end your life in a heartbeat. Upon learning that his boyfriend had mysteriously disappeared, Aiden took it upon himself to seek out Davina. He presented her with some personal items that Josh had left at his place, hoping that Davina could cast a locator spell.
Practically moved in, has he?
They paid no attention to Cole's jokes. Davina and Cole held hands, connecting their energies, and soon a location appeared on the map. It was Lenore's shop. Aiden, worried about his boyfriend, wanted to go after Josh, but Davina pointed out that going alone would be suicide. Cole added that even a group of werewolves would be walking into their deaths.
Not leaving Josh trapped with a nut job that hates vampires.
Neither am I.
Reluctantly, Cole agreed to join them. At that moment, the vampires lay strewn at Finn's feet, their hunger amplified by dark magic, leaving them in agony and on the brink of unconsciousness. Finn roused Marcel, binding him to a chair with vervain-soaked ropes. He demanded to know if Marcel was aware of Klaus's secret. Marcel says that Klaus doesn't trust him that much. After torturing Marcel with spell after spell, Finn finally believed that Marcel truly knew nothing, but it only strengthened his resolve to uncover the secret. Cole casually walked in, claiming he had a score to settle with Marcel. He grabbed a dagger and plunged it into Marcel's hand. This bizarre move left Finn stunned. He accused his brother of being a spineless traitor, completely unworthy of trust, and mercilessly punished him with a spell for his betrayal. Cole, writhing in pain and dropping to his knees, hurriedly explained that he had created a dagger capable of sealing Klaus, and that both he and Davina were his allies. Finn, lost in thought, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He still hadn't found any trace of Elijah, but he knew the noble Elijah would never hide unless he was protecting something.
Finn, you sound like Sherlock Holmes after one too many tequilas.
Finn ignored Cole's sarcasm and bluntly exposed his scheme. Meanwhile, Davina and Aiden were searching through the darkness, with Aiden finally finding his boyfriend. Meanwhile, Finn had already taken down Cole and was using magic to wake Josh from a distance. A sober Josh bares his fangs at Aiden. Around them, the other slumbering vampires were also beginning to stir. Aiden grabbed Davina, and they made a desperate attempt to flee, only to be blocked by his now feral boyfriend. With a bloodthirsty snarl, Josh lunged at Aiden, who had no choice but to snap his boyfriend's neck. Slinging Josh over his shoulder, Aiden raced toward the exit. Cole's ordeal was far from over. He blindly dashed outside, only to be confronted by more vampires. Finn takes out the vampire with a single move, pointing out that he's missing one of his prisoners. Cole, eyes brimming with tears, tried to play the victim, but Finn wasn't moved. Finn cursed Cole, dooming him to be forever trapped in that body, forced to face death and eternal darkness alone.
Go. Brother, I will not miss you.
With Cole dealt with, Finn resumed his interrogation of Marcel. He pointed out that according to werewolf rumors, Marcel was the last person to see Hope alive. He had even buried her body himself. Finn demanded to know how Hope had died. Marcel found himself completely unable to remember. Finn realized that it wasn't that Marcel couldn't remember, someone had forced him to forget. Marcel stared at Finn in bewilderment as he reached a conclusion even Marcel hadn't known.
She's still alive.
Klaus paced at the doorway, unable to enter the house without an invitation. Jackson arrogantly stepped out of the room, but in the next instant, Klaus seized his arm and whisked him away with lightning speed. Jackson was the leader of a werewolf pack, and he had just agreed to marry Haley, the leader of another pack. Unfortunately, Haley had a child with Klaus, a vampire werewolf hybrid from the Originals. To protect the child from their enemies, they had kept the secret that the child was still alive. Even more unfortunate was the fact that, before the two leaders could marry, they needed to hold a truth session. Without it, their pack's abilities wouldn't be shared, and their people wouldn't grow stronger. Upon hearing this, Haley immediately turned to leave, unwilling to reveal her daughter's whereabouts to anyone, but Jackson followed her. Jackson didn't blame Haley and promised to fully respect and protect her secret. To show his sincerity, Jackson decided to share a secret of his own. He took Haley to a desolate graveyard, where the pack's traitors were buried. Beneath one of the small headstones lay his grandfather, a werewolf who had been obsessed with waging war against vampires. He had brutally murdered Haley's parents for trying to persuade the pack to make peace with Marcel. Haley finally learned the truth about her parents' deaths. Jackson revealed that he had only recently discovered this himself. His honesty made Haley let down all her defenses. Klaus found Haley and accused Jackson of using her to strengthen his own power. preparing a werewolf army that could transform at will. Klaus warned Haley not to endanger their child, but Haley argued that she was trying to unite the werewolves against Finn, since Klaus's own family had been the ones threatening their daughter all along.
Hope will always be the daughter of Klaus Michelson, the hybrid killer with 1,000 enemies.
Klaus was left speechless by Haley's retort. Haley pleaded with him to trust her. Klaus said he didn't trust the other werewolf leader, and without another word, he snapped Haley's neck. Klaus dragged Jackson into the forest and tortured him mercilessly, forcing him to confess that his feelings for Haley were merely a ploy to satisfy his thirst for power. But the honorable and kind-hearted Jackson refused to admit to such baseless accusations, even going so far as to taunt Klaus for being jealous of his relationship with Ansel. He says he loves Haley and would fight for her. Klaus pulled out a stake and pressed it against Jackson's throat, facing death. Jackson didn't beg or cry. He only asked Klaus to remember that he had werewolf blood and to help Haley liberate the rest of their people. Haley charged in and knocked Klaus down, striking him without hesitation. Klaus responded by shoving Haley to the ground. They roll over and get up. Haley won't allow Klaus to hurt her fiancé. As Hope's father, Klaus finally agreed to share their daughter's secret with another person. By the quiet riverside, under the soft glow of the dim lights, Haley revealed her daughter's secret to Jackson. There was no longer anything standing in the way of their marriage. Elijah was in the kitchen making breakfast when his young niece suddenly began to cry loudly. He rushed over to check on her, but the wound on his niece's forehead sent Elijah into a panic, and the symbol of evil, the red door, once again flashed in his mind. He snapped out of his thoughts and carefully applied a band-aid to his niece. Camille suggested he should repair the house, as a way to escape the chaotic and repressed thoughts that were driving him to madness. Elijah questions this, but what they didn't know was that the wound on Hope's forehead had been caused by a witch hundreds of miles away. That witch was none other than Freya, who had just awakened from her long slumber. Finn was shocked to see Freya alive. Freya explained that their aunt had cast a spell ensuring she would awaken for 1 year after every century of sleep. She told Finn that their aunt was not dead. Freya had escaped her aunt's control and had been hiding ever since. Finn told his sister that Klaus has a daughter, but he hasn't been able to track down the child's whereabouts. Freya fiddled with the necklace around her neck, stating that all magic leaves a trace. Even a powerful witch like their mother was as naive as a schoolchild compared to their aunt. Freya picked up a crawling caterpillar from the table and held it in her hand. The next second, a butterfly flew out of her palm, with newfound support. Finn quickly took action. He awakened Marcel and ordered him to retrieve Haley's blood, threatening to kill a vampire every hour if Marcel failed. Haley is at a loss as she keeps receiving brooms from her people. Jackson explained that it was an old tradition, hinting that the bride doesn't have to wait until the wedding is over to be with her husband. He smiled mischievously, though a bit shyly. It took Haley a moment to catch on, and the atmosphere immediately became awkward. Jackson then showed her the crib he had prepared, mentioning that some of the other pack leaders were planning to step down and let him lead, allowing their packs to merge. When that happened, they would have a formidable army to protect her and Hope. Haley caught Marcel spying on her from the bushes. Marcel revealed Finn's demands in full detail. Haley hurriedly called Klaus. At that moment, Klaus had just learned that Cole was dying. He said that if he could read Cole's memories and figure out what spell Finn had used to trap him in that body, they could turn it against Finn. Cole refused, but Klaus didn't give him a chance to say no. Klaus placed his hands on Cole's head and, to his surprise, discovered that his brother had been secretly plotting to seal him with a dagger. An enraged Klaus accused Cole, but Cole angrily retorted that he had never received any love. His older brother wanted him dead, his second brother had vanished, and his third brother wouldn't even help him. The more Cole spoke, the angrier he became, until he finally knocked Klaus to the ground and stormed off in a rage. Cole hid in his secret hideout, silently shedding tears. Suddenly, blood began to trickle from his nose, and he knew his time was running out. The phone rang suddenly, and Finn instructed him to retrieve Klaus's blood, promising to lift the curse on his brother. Cole agreed angrily. They arranged to meet in an hour. Cole returned to Klaus, unleashing his fury without restraint. He bitterly complained that he wasn't a bad person but had always been misunderstood and pushed aside, that no one cared whether he lived or died. Klaus angrily grabbed Cole by the throat and Cole screamed at his brother to kill him. But even in his anger, Klaus released him. He said that although he often sealed Cole with a dagger, everything he did was for Cole's own good. Klaus extended his hand to his brother, and Cole, taking his hand, stood up and revealed that Finn had made a deal with him. Cole then willingly allowed Klaus to enter his mind by holding onto his brother's hand. The three siblings arrived at the designated meeting spot, only to find it completely empty. Rebecca noticed traces of a spell on the table. Cole picked up a charred piece of wood from the ashes, uttered an incantation, and restored it to its original form. It was a wooden plaque symbolizing a child. Finn had already discovered Hope's location, and everything he'd done was just a diversion, while they had been running around for hours. Finn had traveled hundreds of miles and now stood before Elijah. With a swift motion, Finn sent Elijah flying without any hesitation. Finn conjured an invisible barrier out of thin air, trapping Elijah inside, and informed him that Freya had returned. Finn controlled a hammer on the wall, driving it into Elijah's back, causing him to collapse to the ground in pain. He takes control of the wooden-handled shovel and drives it into Elijah's chest, and Elijah's face turns blue. Haley pinned her hopes on completing the Alpha Wolves ritual, unaware that a group of vampires, trapped by Finn, had been sent into the forest. The werewolf leaders fall to their knees as the elders conducting the ritual look back and a group of vampires appear behind them. The vampires, controlled by a spell, lunged at the werewolves, biting them and plunging the scene into chaos. Haley and Marcel rushed forward to help, but the vampires, even after having their necks snapped, stood back up within seconds. Haley fought the vampires alone. Marcel hid in a small cabin with the werewolves, waiting for Klaus to break the spell. Klaus was banking on severing Finn's link with their parents, which would make his brother an ordinary witch, no match for Elijah. But Cole said he couldn't do it. Finn was far more powerful than him. Cole and Rebecca arrived at the witch's cemetery. Cole suggested that if they couldn't sever Finn's power source, they could instead overwhelm him with energy, causing his body to shatter under the strain. Although Finn would eventually resurrect, it would at least delay the crisis surrounding Hope. Rebecca gently expressed how much she loved the side of Cole. Cole, filled with guilt, vowed to return Rebecca to her original body, even if it meant risking his own life. Klaus walked in carrying a large bag filled with dark magical items, stating that these were ancient relics he had collected over the past 1,000 years. Klaus pulled out the white oak stake and handed it to Cole, leaving him deeply shaken, as this gesture meant his brother was placing his life in Cole's hands. Cole placed the white oak stake on the stone slab, took Rebecca's hands, and began to draw her energy while intently chanting the spell. At that moment, Finn was in the house, searching for his niece, unaware that Camille had taken Hope out. Elijah slowly regained consciousness. Finding nothing, Finn called out loudly for Camille. Elijah stood up, breaking the stake lodged in his chest. Cole's spell wasn't going smoothly. Both he and Rebecca were thrown back by the magic, their noses bleeding, though Cole seemed oblivious to it, lamenting that if he just had a little more power, it would work. Klaus stepped forward, offering his energy to his brother. Cole hesitated, but Klaus grabbed the hooked dagger and handed it to him, then knelt before his brother on one knee. In that moment, all the animosity between the two brothers vanished. Klaus lay on the ground, drained of his power. Cole grasped Rebecca's hand and began chanting the spell once more. Finn is still searching the room with no luck when a dagger is suddenly thrust into his abdomen. Elijah had entered. Finn pulled out the dagger, unaware that his brother's spell had already begun to take effect. Blood began to trickle from his nose, but he still had enough strength to toy with Elijah. With a casual flick of his wrist, Finn sent Elijah flying through the wall, crashing to the ground as gas began leaking into the room. Elijah looks at the blood on his hand in a daze, red door once again disturbing his thoughts. Finn staggered forward, the spell cast by his brother causing him unbearable pain, as the overwhelming energy became too much for him to handle. All three siblings screamed in unison. Finn collapsed to his knees. On the other side, Cole and Rebecca were also bounced off by a force. The spell had worked. Haley was still battling the vampires when Gia suddenly collapsed in front of her. The spell controlling the vampires had vanished. Klaus regained his strength and awoke. He thanked his siblings, emotionally declaring that family is power. Now, everyone pinned their hopes on Elijah, hoping he could defeat Finn, who had lost his power source. Elijah, still unaware, knelt on the floor, seemingly preoccupied with the stains on his clothes as Finn continued to taunt him. Camille was driving Hope home, and just as they were about to reach the front door, the car inexplicably stalled. Camille was bewildered. Elijah finally responded to Finn's insults, stating that while his brother had been rambling, gas had silently filled the entire house.
You have disgraced this family for the last time.
Elijah removed his daylight ring and extended his arm into the sunlight. His hand ignited instantly, and a massive explosion ripped through the entire building. Camille watched in panic as this unfolded, and at that very moment, the car suddenly started working again. She looked back at Hope, who was happily sucking on her pacifier. This innocent little girl had just revealed her immense, mysterious power.